New York is my hometown, so I want to bring all of the work that I do here and have an event like this where we get to share it with people. New York will tell you the truth, so that's always a nice experience. Not always, but always. Well, he's a tech giant who kind of lives in his own mind. He became attracted to Bernadette when they were in college, and she was a creative artist living in her own mind. And I think they both had a fierce advocacy for one another because they knew that there's a portion of what was happening internally to them they could never share. They had either their work or their creative influence. That was the only conduit to that kind of lightning they had inside them. So it was an exciting relationship and marriage. And Elgin gets caught up in the success of his company, in the success of his technology, in the fact that now living in a new economy where technology is so important. So it makes him one of the forerunners in the zeitgeist. And I think that's an unexpected twist for him and one that takes him away from his marriage. I think it's a human experience, and it's certainly, as told by Maria and interpreted by Rick, very funny and idiosyncratic, and those are the kinds of comedies that I appreciate, and I feel grateful to get an opportunity to explore. He creates a really easy environment for, you're generally left with a taste of the experience that you're left with from doing a film is typically how the director managed this set. So if they're a tyrant, whether the movie's good or bad, what you remember is the tyranny. If they're a gentle, creative spirit, what you remember is that spirit. And Rick carries that in spades. And Cate does as well. And they're both hyper ambitious, and they can't wait to get to work every day. And that's the kind of experience that you can't wait for.
Well, Bernadette has a kind of a glorious but often irritating relentlessness. I think her inner monologue is painful to her and increasingly painful to the people around her, because basically she's got all this creative energy. She's an architect, she's a MacArthur genius, but she's left that aside because of professional failure and thrown herself into raising her, very precious daughter. Now her daughter's about to leave for boarding school, and she's got to find an outlet before she self-combusts. So an outlet for all that creative energy. Oh, look, I'm an admirer of his body, his work, and he deals with time in a really interesting way. Not only in the obvious ways with boyhood, but he deals with, adolescence. He deals with childhood a lot, in his movies, and the idea of moving from being an adolescent into being a partner to someone, into being a parent, like the beautiful work he did with Julie Delpy and Ethan Hawke, over all those years. But he's incredibly soulful.
I love New York, and I had the call back in New York for this film, so it's kind of like revisiting it after everything that's happened. It's so cool. It's like closure, but I love this city. It's so exciting. The energy's so high, and I love being here. So it's a defining moment for me, I guess. Well, I think that it was better for me. It's easier for me because I'm not the director, so I didn't have to worry about as much as that timeline stuff. But I think that as an actor, I got to see all the context that sometimes you don't get to see reading a screenplay or script. You don't get to see the perspective that I think I got while reading the book. And I don't know. I fell in love with the book, and it helped me dive so much deeper into the script when I was in the film. And so I think that I loved it. I know there were some challenges with including everything, but it's just a matter of translation and timing, and film is very linear and literal, and so I think that that's something that everybody had to keep in mind while creating the film. My character is the daughter of Elgin and Bernadette, and obviously her and Bernadette have a really special relationship, and she really just is Bernadette's best friend and partner in crime. And so I would say that what influenced me during the filming of B was, I think the book and also my relationship with the other cast members. I mean, we all got to talk through everything, and so that really influenced me when I was thinking about our relationship, because it was very relationship driven. You know, not only about Bernadette as an individual, but about Bernadette and Bea and Bernadette and Elgin and everybody that she comes across along the way. I think that talking through that and, you know, always having the book on hand, always going back to those themes that we started out with really helped me. She's in a league of her own. She really is. And it was such an incredible learning experience for me. She's also so wonderful and funny to be around. I mean, I'm lucky enough to have the privilege to be working with her, let alone on my first movie. It's crazy. And I'm so grateful. I think it's all different, but I think really, I hope that people see themselves in either Bea or Bernadette or Audrey or Elgin or anybody. I really hope that they can connect with the storyline, because I think that's what movies are all about, is going and seeing yourself in some aspect and connecting to that. And, you know, I think that has an impact on your heart when you go and you see a movie and you really feel yourself in it. So I hope that's what people take away from it.
I lived here and worked here for a really long time in New York, and of recent years, I've always had the premieres on the West Coast, and so it's very exciting to be doing this here tonight. I'm loving it. It's great. Yeah. Well, really, it was a challenge because that the book had so many layers to it, and it's a funny book too. It's comedic. And so it was just really interesting to see how Rick was going to he really made it a Rick Linklater movie. You know, there's comedy in it, but it's kind of a dramedy, you might say. Kind of. So, yeah. The themes of it, I think a lot of people, a lot of women go through trying to balance everything and find yourself in, and it's a little different. It's a little bit better now, even with the women's movement But, you know, it's hard to find your place when you're a creative person and you're trying to raise a family. And I think there'll be a lot of relatability to the film, because there are a lot of women who gave up their careers to have families, and that just kind of you can do it all if you thrive on the energy of it. Because, you know, it's kind of like the Energizer Bunny. When you are super busy with everything, it's almost like it recharges you, like a recharge battery, and then you can do it all. I really believe that, actually.
Well, it's especially being here on the Lower East Side, it feels perfect for Bernadette. It's like there's so much design here, and Bernadette was a designer. She was an architect, so I think it's just awesome, very good. Really clean lines. I wanted to convey the fact that Bernadette was quite brilliant and had a little bit of an online shopping obsession. So we tried to incorporate that with clean lines, textures, patterns. She was amazing, absolutely amazing, and she can dress. Like, I learned so much from her as far as putting things together, and I think we really created a very universal kind of a simple look for Bernadette.
It was definitely a big challenge, but it was so fun to be hanging out with such fun, complicated characters, and Maria's writing and all the dialogue and the ideas and the humor. Casting, to me, it starts just like life. You know, intelligence and a sense of humor is a really good place to start. That's a really good start in my book. So, yeah, that's who I want to work with. And so, yeah, I was so blessed to get so many wonderful actors, you know. It's kind of heartbreaking in the world. There's so many great actors and not enough parts. So, you know, the ones you just treasure the time you do get with the ones who do end up in the movie. And we had a good time. Yeah, well, you know, it's an honor, but you sit down and do the work. You know, she's got that, you know, I always said to portray a genius like Bernadette, you kind of need a genius. Not a lot of actors fit that category, I would say. I mean, there's great actors, but Cate's one of those, you know, otherworldly things. So I knew I was always on the right path with her. And it was just fun to have a front row seat to her, you know, working with her and seeing her just do something very subtle. No one would notice, but I was like, God, no one else would do that. That's why she's Cate Blanchett. You know, that was I got to experience that every day. So very cool.
I have been coming to New York ever since I was a little kid. I've always wanted to live here. I think the closest I got was like a few months. So to be able to come here to celebrate a film, especially this film, just it means so much. This city is so special. Becky is a field researcher. She's a scientist on her way to Antarctica, and she bumps into Bernadette, and she gives her a job, gives her something to do. I mean, honestly, it was so funny. Somebody asked me today, who would you always want to share the screen with? And I had always said jokingly, I was like, oh, well, Cate Blanchett, obviously. And I was like, well, now I have to come up with somebody new for that answer, because actually Cate Blanchett was the person that I would always dream of being with in a scene. And so to get to do a couple scenes with her was a total dream come true. She was amazing. I'm glad. I really hope that people walk away from this film respecting themselves and respecting the fact that you can't sacrifice who you are or try to hide it. I think that this film is about embracing who you are and leaning into it and giving yourself the fire and the permission to be who you want to be. And I hope that people, I don't know, feel impassioned to take the next step, and whatever that is, you know, where it's like they want to go live abroad, or they want to go get a different job, or I don't know, they want to cut their hair. Like, who cares? Just whatever you want to do it for you.
I live here, and so it is just such a treat to bring it to the homies and my family. I love the city so much. I think it's a really cinematic city, so it feels really nice to be here with Bernadette. Playing a villain is like, I mean, she's not even a villain, let's be honest. She's a wannabe villain. She doesn't even get in there. But she's great. I mean, I think of her as like a seltzer bottle, just like full of all these bubbles that are like barely contained by the cap, and just wound up really tight and conniving and manipulative. So it's like such a treat to play somebody like that. It was wild because she is the GOAT. You know, she's the greatest of all time. And some of my favorite performances on the screen have been hers. So I haven't told anybody this, but after our first rehearsal, I went to work out because I was like, I don't know what to do with this energy, and I called my mom, and I got on the elliptical and I put her on like speaker, and then I just burst into tears because I was like, I get to work with these people? What? So, yeah, emotional. I think it's a story about this family who is coming to terms with who they are and learning how to grow together. And I think that all of us as individuals have movements in our lives, chapters in our lives, where we learn new things about ourselves. And it's up to us to take the time to ask, where are you? You know, who are you right now? Where do you want to be? Who do you want to be? And I think we aren't often given that time and space to allow that examination to happen. And this story is really compelling because we get to see this really complex protagonist reckon with herself in a really brave way.